Sarah walked slowly down the hospital hallway, her head down, avoiding eye contact with everyone she passed. The fluorescent lights above seemed too bright, making her feel exposed and vulnerable. She had been living on the streets for 3 months now, and every day felt like a battle just to survive. Dr. Michael Chen was finishing his evening rounds when he noticed her sitting alone in the waiting area. Her clothes were dirty and torn, her hair tangled and unwashed. Most people would have looked away, but something about her posture spoke to him. She wasn't just physically tired. There was a deep exhaustion in her soul that he recognized from his years working with trauma patients. "Excuse me, miss," he said gently, approaching her with careful steps. "Are you waiting to see someone?" Sarah looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. I don't know if I should be here," she whispered. "I'm not like the other patients." Michael sat down beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "What makes you think that?" She pulled her jacket tighter around herself as if trying to disappear. "Look at me. I haven't had a proper shower in weeks. My clothes smell. I sleep in doorways and eat from garbage cans. I'm not clean." The words hit Michael harder than he expected. In his 15 years as a doctor, he had seen poverty, addiction, and homelessness. But there was something different about Sarah's shame. It wasn't just about her physical state. There was a deeper wound that went beyond what soap and water could fix. "Being clean isn't about where you sleep or what you wear," Michael said softly. "It's about being human, and you're just as human as anyone else who walks through these doors." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. "You don't understand. It's not just about being homeless. There are things about me, things I've done." Michael noticed the way she flinched when people walked past, how she kept her arms wrapped tightly around herself, and the way she spoke as if she carried some terrible secret. He had seen these signs before in patients who had survived terrible trauma. "Would you like to talk somewhere more private?" he offered. "I have an office where we won't be interrupted." Sarah hesitated for a long moment, then nodded slowly. As they walked down the corridor, Michael noticed how she stayed close to the wall, never walking in the center of the hallway. Her movements were careful and calculated, as if she was always ready to run or hide. His office was small but warm, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs. Sarah sat on the edge of her seat, ready to bolt at any moment. Michael poured her a cup of hot tea from the kettle he kept on his desk. "I'm Dr. Chen, but you can call me Michael," he said, handing her the cup. "What's your name?" "Sarah," she replied, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "Sarah Martinez." "It's nice to meet you, Sarah. You said earlier that you're not clean. Can you tell me what you mean by that?" Sarah stared into her tea for a long time before speaking. "I was trafficked," she said so quietly that Michael had to lean forward to hear her. "For 2 years. I escaped 3 months ago, but I can still feel their hands on me. I can still smell them. No matter how much I scrub, I can't get clean." Michael's heart broke for her, but he kept his expression calm and professional. He had worked with trafficking survivors before, and he knew that the trauma went far deeper than physical scars. "Sarah, what happened to you wasn't your fault," he said gently. "And the feeling of being unclean, that's not about your body. That's about what they did to your spirit." "But it is my fault," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "I trusted them. I got in their car willingly. I believed their lies about modeling opportunities and a better life." Michael moved his chair closer, careful not to invade her personal space. "You were 17 when they took you, weren't you?" Sarah nodded, surprised that he seemed to understand her story without her having to explain every detail. 17-year-old girls are supposed to trust adults who offer them opportunities. "You weren't naive, you were normal. They were predators who knew exactly how to manipulate someone your age." For the first time since she had entered the hospital, Sarah looked directly at Michael. In his eyes, she saw something she hadn't seen in years. Compassion without judgment, understanding without pity. "I don't know how to live in the normal world anymore," she admitted. "Everything scares me. I jump at every sound. I can't sleep indoors because I feel trapped. I can't trust anyone, especially men." "But you trusted me enough to come to my office," Michael pointed out. "That's a start." Sarah considered this, realizing he was right. There was something about his gentle manner and patient approach that felt safe to her. "I want to help you, Sarah," Michael said. "Not just with medical care, but with finding resources to help you heal. There are people who understand what you've been through. places where you can feel safe while you recover. I don't have money, Sarah said quickly. I can't pay for treatment or therapy or anything like that. Money isn't what matters here, Michael replied. What matters is that you're ready to start healing. Are you ready for that? Sarah thought about the past 3 months on the streets. The constant fear. The way she flinched every time someone looked at her. She thought about the nightmares that plagued her sleep and the way she felt like a ghost moving through the world. I'm tired of being afraid, she whispered. I'm tired of feeling dirty no matter how much I wash. I'm tired of feeling like I'm not worth saving. Then let's start there, Michael said. Let's start with the truth that you are absolutely worth saving. Over the next few weeks, Sarah began meeting with Michael regularly. He had connected her with a specialized shelter for trafficking survivors, a place where she had her own small room and access to counseling services. But progress was slow and painful. Every morning, Sarah would wake up in a cold sweat, her heart pounding from nightmares that felt more real than her waking hours. She would spend long minutes in the shower, scrubbing her skin until it was raw and red. But the feeling of being dirty never went away. It wasn't dirt that soap could remove. It was shame that had settled deep in her bones. Michael noticed how she always wore long sleeves and pants, even on warm days. She kept her hair pulled back severely and wore no makeup or jewelry. It was as if she was trying to make herself invisible, to take up as little space as possible in the world. Tell me about before, Michael said during one of their sessions. What were you like before they took you? Sarah's face softened for just a moment. I loved to dance, she said quietly. I had dreams of going to college, maybe becoming a teacher. I was the kind of person who would help lost tourists find their way around the city. My mom always said I was too trusting for my own good. Your mom was wrong, Michael said firmly. Being trusting isn't a character flaw. Having faith in people's basic goodness is a beautiful quality. What they did was steal that from you. But it doesn't mean you were wrong to have it. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, a gesture Michael had come to recognize as her way of self-soothing. I can't dance anymore, she said. I tried once at the shelter. They have a recreation room with music. But when I closed my eyes and started to move, I was right back in that place. I could feel their eyes on me, judging me, using me. Michael made a note in his file, then set his pen down. Trauma has a way of taking our joys hostage, he explained. But that doesn't mean they're gone forever. Healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about reclaiming the parts of yourself that they tried to destroy. During their sessions, Sarah began to share more details about her captivity. The psychological torture had been as brutal as the physical abuse. They had systematically broken down her sense of self-worth, convincing her that she was worthless, that no one would ever want her, that she deserved everything that happened to her. They had rules, Sarah explained, her voice flat and emotionless as she recounted the horror. We weren't allowed to look at ourselves in mirrors. They said we were too ugly, too dirty, too broken to deserve to see our own faces. They gave us numbers instead of names. I was 23. Michael felt his hands clench into fists under his desk, but he kept his voice steady. What name did your parents give you? Sarah Elena Martinez, she said, and for the first time in months there was a tiny spark of pride in her voice. My grandmother's name was Elena. Sarah Elena Martinez, Michael repeated. That's a beautiful name. A name with history and love behind it. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. I forgot it for a while, she whispered. When they called me 23 for so long, I started to forget my real name. Sometimes I would whisper it to myself at night, just so I wouldn't lose it completely. Michael reached across his desk and offered her a box of tissues. You never lost it, he said gently. They tried to take it from you, but it was always there, waiting for you to come back to it. As the weeks passed, Sarah began to show small signs of progress. She started making eye contact occasionally during their conversations. She asked for books to read, saying that stories helped distract her from the memories. She even smiled once when Michael told her about a patient who had brought their therapy dog to the hospital, but the shame about being unclean persisted. Sarah would often reference it during their sessions, talking about how she felt contaminated by what had been done to her. They used to tell us that we were ruined, Sarah said during one particularly difficult session, that no decent person would ever want us, that we were damaged goods. They said we belonged to them forever because no one else would take us. Michael leaned forward in his chair. Sarah, look at me, he said. Do you think I see you as damaged goods? Sarah met his eyes briefly, then looked away. You're a doctor. You have to help people. It's your job. It's my job to treat patients professionally, Michael corrected. It's not my job to see them as human beings worthy of respect and dignity. That's just who I am, and it's how I genuinely see you. But you don't really know me, Sarah protested. You don't know all the things I had to do to survive in there. You don't know how many times I wanted to give up, how many times I thought about ending it all. Michael was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I know that you survived something that would have broken many people. I know that you found the courage to escape when the opportunity came. I know that despite everything they did to convince you otherwise, you still had enough self-worth left to seek help. That tells me everything I need to know about who you really are. Sarah broke down completely then, sobbing with a raw grief that seemed to come from the deepest part of her soul. Michael sat with her in the silence, letting her cry without trying to fix or stop her pain. I want to believe you, she said through her tears. I want to believe that I'm worth something, that I can be clean again. But every time I look in a mirror, I see what they turned me into. What if we changed what you see when you look in the mirror? Michael suggested. What if we worked on helping you see Sarah Elena Martinez instead of 23? Sarah wiped her eyes and looked at him with something that might have been hope. How do we do that? One day at a time, Michael said. One true thing about yourself at a time. Starting with this, you are not what was done to you. You are not defined by their crimes against you. You are Sarah Elena Martinez, and you survived. 3 months into her recovery, Sarah was still struggling with the invisible chains that bound her. While her physical wounds had healed and she was no longer living on the streets, the mental shackles remained firmly in place. She followed rigid routines that kept her feeling safe, but also trapped her in patterns that prevented real healing. Every morning, Sarah would wake up at exactly 5:30 a.m., shower for precisely 20 minutes, and dress in the same style of clothing, loose, dark, concealing. She ate her meals alone, spoke only when spoken to, and kept her eyes down when walking through the shelter's common areas. The other residents had tried to befriend her, but Sarah kept everyone at arm's length. Michael noticed that Sarah had created a prison for herself that was almost as restrictive as the one she had escaped from. She was safe now, but she wasn't truly free. Sarah, when was the last time you made a choice just because you wanted to? Michael asked during one of their sessions. Sarah looked confused by the question. What do you mean? I mean, when did you last eat something because it sounded good to you, or wear a color because you liked it, or do something just because it brought you joy? Sarah thought for a long time. I don't remember, she admitted. I guess I'm afraid to want things. Wanting things got me into trouble before Michael understood. Sarah had learned to suppress her desires as a survival mechanism. In captivity, expressing preferences or wants had likely led to punishment or manipulation by her captors. What if I told you that having wants and desires is part of being human? Michael said. Part of being free? But what if I want the wrong things again? Sarah asked, her voice filled with anxiety. Then you'll learn from the experience and make different choices next time, Michael replied. That's what freedom is, the right to make mistakes and learn from them. This conversation planted a seed in Sarah's mind. Over the next few days, she found herself paying attention to small things she had been ignoring. She noticed that she actually preferred tea to coffee, that she liked the color blue, and that there was a book in the shelter's library that she wanted to read, but had been afraid to check out. The breakthrough came during a group therapy session at the shelter. Sarah usually sat in the back row and never spoke, but that day another survivor was sharing her story about trying to reconnect with her family after escaping her. Traffickers. I just don't know if they can ever see me as their daughter again, the woman said through tears. I feel like I'm a different person now, someone they won't recognize or love. Without thinking, Sarah spoke up. You're still you, she said, surprising everyone, including herself. What happened to us doesn't change who we are at our core. It can't, because if it did, then they would have won. The room was quiet for a moment, then the woman who had been speaking smiled through her tears. Thank you, she said. I needed to hear that. After the session, Sarah realized something important had happened. In comforting another survivor, she had spoken a truth that she was finally beginning to believe about herself. Michael noticed the change immediately when Sarah came to their next session. She was sitting up straighter and she made eye contact when she spoke. I think I'm starting to understand something, Sarah said. I've been so focused on feeling clean that I forgot about feeling free. Tell me more about that, Michael encouraged. I realize that I'm still following their rules, even though I'm not there anymore, Sarah explained. I wake up at the same time every day because they used to wake us up at dawn. I shower for 20 minutes because that's how long they gave us. I don't look at myself in mirrors because they told us we weren't worthy of seeing our own faces. Michael felt a surge of pride for Sarah's insight. This was the kind of breakthrough that could change everything. What would happen if you broke one of those rules? He asked. Sarah looked scared but also curious. I don't know. I've been afraid to try. What if we started small? Michael suggested. What if tomorrow you sleep until you naturally wake up instead of setting an alarm? The idea terrified Sarah, but it also excited her. What if I sleep too late? What if something bad happens because I'm not awake early enough? Then we'll deal with whatever happens, Michael said. But Sarah, you're safe now. You're in control of your own schedule. There's no punishment waiting for you if you sleep an extra hour. That night, Sarah lay in bed staring at her alarm clock. She had set it for 5:30 a.m. as usual, but her hand hovered over the off button. After several minutes of internal struggle, she turned it off. When she woke up naturally at 7:15 a.m., sunlight was streaming through her window. For the first time in months, she had slept through the night without nightmares. She felt rested, and more importantly, she felt like she had chosen something for herself. This small act of rebellion against her internalized rules gave Sarah the courage to try bigger changes. She started varying her shower time, sometimes taking quick 5-minute showers, sometimes luxuriating for 30 minutes. She experimented with wearing different colors, a blue shirt that brought out her eyes, a red sweater that made her feel bold. The most significant change came when Sarah decided to look at herself in the mirror. Really look. Not just the quick glances she allowed herself while brushing her teeth. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her room, taking deep breaths to calm her racing heart. When she finally raised her eyes to meet her reflection, she didn't see 23, the broken woman her captors had created. She saw Sarah Elena Martinez, a survivor who was learning to live again. Hello, Sarah, she whispered to her reflection, and for the first time, she smiled at what she saw. When Michael heard about Sarah's mirror experiment, he could barely contain his excitement. This was the moment he had been hoping for, when Sarah began to see herself as more than just a victim of trafficking. How did it feel? He asked. Scary at first, Sarah admitted, but then empowering. Like I was taking something back that belonged to me. You were, Michael said. You were taking back your right to exist in the world as yourself, not as what they tried to make you. Sarah nodded, understanding flooding her features. The shackles aren't just what they put on our bodies, she said. They're what they put in our minds. The rules, the shame, the fear of making choices. And now you're learning to remove them one by one, Michael said with a gentle smile. 9 months into Sarah's recovery journey, she had made remarkable progress. But there was still one barrier that seemed insurmountable. Despite all the healing work she had done, despite beginning to see her own strength and worth, Sarah still carried the deepest shame about her body and what had been done to it. The issue came to a head when Sarah developed a serious respiratory infection that required immediate medical attention. When Michael examined her, he noticed that she had several untreated injuries and scars that she had been hiding under her clothing. Sarah, some of these wounds look infected, Michael said gently. How long have you been dealing with these injuries? Sarah pulled her shirt down quickly, her face flushing with embarrassment. They're old, she said dismissively. From before? Some of them look fresh, Michael observed. Sarah, have you been hurting yourself? The question hung in the air between them. Sarah looked away, unable to meet Michael's eyes. Sometimes I need to feel clean, she whispered. When the memories get too strong, when I can still feel their hands on me, I scrub until the feeling goes away. Michael felt his heart break all over again. Sarah had been using physical pain to try to wash away emotional trauma, literally trying to scrub herself clean of memories that soap could never touch. Sarah, look at me, Michael said gently. When she finally raised her eyes to his, he continued, Your body is not dirty. What they did to your body doesn't make you dirty. Nothing you could ever do would make you deserving of pain. But you don't understand, Sarah said, her voice breaking. You don't know what it feels like to have someone use your body like Like it's nothing. Like you're nothing. I can't get the feeling of their hands off me. I can't make it stop. Michael was quiet for a long moment, then he did something he had never done with a patient before. He rolled up his own sleeves, revealing scars on his arms. Sarah stared in shock. What? I was abused as a child, Michael said quietly. Physical and sexual abuse by my stepfather from the time I was 8 until I was 14. For years afterward, I felt exactly like you do now. Dirty, contaminated, like I could never be clean again. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I'm not telling you this for sympathy, Michael said. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand that I know what it feels like to believe that your body has been ruined by what someone else did to it. And I want you to know that feeling is a lie. Sarah listened intently as Michael continued. For years I avoided mirrors. I couldn't stand to be touched even in innocent ways. I thought I was permanently broken. But Sarah, our bodies are not containers for other people's sins. They're not repositories for shame that doesn't belong to us. How did you get past it? Sarah asked. Michael rolled his sleeves back down and sat facing her directly. I learned that my body wasn't the problem. My body was actually the hero of my story. It survived, it healed. It carried me through the worst experiences of my life and brought me out the other side. I never thought about it that way, Sarah said. Your body isn't your enemy, Sarah. Your body is what saved you. It endured 2 years of unimaginable trauma and somehow found the strength to run when the opportunity came. It carried you through 3 months on the streets. It brought you here to safety, to healing. Sarah looked down at her hands, really seeing them for the first time in months. These hands had comforted other victims. These hands had written her real name over and over in her journal when she was afraid she might forget it. These hands had reached out for help when she was ready to accept it. They used to tell us that our bodies belonged to them, Sarah said quietly, that we had no right to our own skin. That was another lie, Michael said firmly. Your body belongs to you. It always has. What they did was steal temporary use of it, but they could never take ownership of it. You are not what was done to your body. You are the spirit that lives within it, the soul that refused to be broken. Michael reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small hand mirror. I want to try something with you, but only if you're willing. Sarah eyed the mirror nervously. What? I want you to look at yourself again, but this time, instead of looking for what's wrong or dirty or broken, I want you to look for what's strong and beautiful and surviving. Sarah hesitated, then took the mirror with trembling hands. She looked at her reflection, and for the first time, instead of seeing a victim, she tried to see a survivor. Tell me what you see, Michael said gently. I see... Sarah paused, struggling to find words. I see eyes that have seen terrible things but still have kindness in them. What else? I see hands that helped other girls when they were scared. Sarah's voice grew stronger. I see legs that carried me to freedom when I had the chance to run. What else? Sarah looked deeper into the mirror and something shifted in her expression. I see someone who refused to die even when dying seemed easier than living. Michael smiled, watching Sarah truly see herself for the first time in years. Sarah, every part of your body tells a story of survival, he said. Every scar is proof that you healed. Every breath you take is an act of defiance against those who tried to destroy you. Sarah set the mirror down and looked at Michael with wonder. I spent so much time hating my body for what was done to it that I forgot to thank it for getting me through it. Your body isn't dirty, Sarah. It's sacred. It's the vessel that carried your unbreakable spirit through hell and back. It deserves your respect, not your punishment. For the first time since her rescue, Sarah felt a sense of peace with her physical self. The shame that had felt so permanent, so much a part of her identity, began to loosen its grip. I want to stop hurting myself, Sarah said. I want to start treating my body like it's mine again. It was always yours, Michael said. Even when it didn't feel like it, even when they convinced you otherwise, it was always yours. You just needed to remember how to claim it back. Sarah nodded, understanding flooding her features. The cleanness she had been seeking wasn't something that could be scrubbed into existence. It was something that had always been there, waiting for her to recognize it. The purity of a soul that had refused to be corrupted, no matter what was done to the body that housed it. 6 months into Sarah's recovery, Michael noticed she was still carrying invisible burdens that seemed to weigh heavier on her than before. While she had made tremendous progress in reclaiming small freedoms, and beginning to see herself as Sarah Elena Martinez instead of 23. There were still moments when she would retreat into herself completely. During one particularly difficult session, Sarah sat in Michael's office with her arms wrapped tightly around herself, rocking slightly in her chair. She had been triggered by something, Michael wasn't sure what, and had called asking for an emergency appointment. "Sarah, you're safe," Michael said gently. "You're in my office." "Can you tell me what happened?" Sarah's breathing was shallow and rapid. "I saw him," she whispered. "One of them. He was at the grocery store and he looked right at me." Michael's heart raced with concern. "Are you certain it was one of your traffickers?" Sarah shook her head, confusion clouding her features. No, I don't think it actually was. But for a moment I was so sure. My body it remembered everything. I couldn't breathe. I had to leave my groceries and run. This wasn't uncommon for trauma survivors. The nervous system could react to perceived threats even when there was no real danger. But Michael could see that Sarah was losing faith in her own progress. "I thought I was getting better," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "I thought I was healing. But I'm still broken, aren't I? I'm still not normal." Michael moved his chair closer to Sarah's. "Can I share something with you that might sound strange?" Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. "I have been thinking about your healing journey and I realize that I've been approaching this wrong," Michael said. "I've been so focused on helping you overcome your trauma that I haven't fully acknowledged something important." "What?" Sarah asked. "The incredible strength it took for you to survive what you survived," Michael said. "Sarah, what you went through wasn't just difficult. It was designed to destroy you completely. The fact that you're sitting here, working toward healing, speaking your own name again, that's not just recovery. That's a miracle." Sarah looked at him with confusion. "But I'm still having flashbacks. I'm still afraid. I still feel dirty sometimes." "Of course you do," Michael said. "You endured systematic psychological and physical torture for 2 years. The fact that you have any capacity for trust, any ability to hope, any connection to your own identity, that speaks to a strength that most people can't even comprehend." Michael paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Sarah, I need to tell you something that I should have said months ago. I need to ask for your forgiveness." "Forgiveness? For what?" Sarah asked, genuinely surprised. "For not seeing clearly enough how much you've already accomplished," Michael said. "Every day that you wake up and choose to keep living, every time you speak your real name instead of that number, every moment that you show kindness to another survivor, you're not just healing. You're defeating them." Sarah stared at him, something shifting in her expression. "I've been so focused on your trauma that I haven't celebrated your triumph," Michael continued. "You escaped, Sarah. They had you trapped for 2 years and you found a way out. You survived living on the streets. You had the courage to trust me enough to accept help. You've been dismantling their lies about you piece by piece." Michael stood up and walked to his filing cabinet, pulling out a folder. "I want to show you something," he said, returning to his seat. He opened the folder and pulled out his notes from their first session. "This is what I wrote about you the day we met. Patient presence with severe trauma symptoms, dissociation, inability to maintain eye contact, refers to herself as not clean, shows signs of complex PTSD." He set that paper aside and pulled out his notes from their most recent session. "This is what I wrote last week." Sarah made prolonged eye contact throughout session, spoke with confidence about her progress, demonstrated clear sense of personal agency, expressed genuine concern for fellow survivors in group therapy. Sarah read both sets of notes, her eyes widening as she saw the contrast. "Do you see the difference?" Michael asked. "This isn't the same person. Not because you've forgotten what happened to you, but because you've remembered who you are despite what happened to you." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, processing this new perspective. "I never thought about it that way," she said slowly. "Sarah, I need you to understand something," Michael said, his voice filled with emotion he rarely let show with patience. "In 15 years of practice, I have never worked with someone who has shown more courage than you have. Not because your trauma was worse than others, but because of how you've chosen to face it." "But I'm still afraid," Sarah said. "I still have bad days." "Fear doesn't make you weak," Michael replied. "Fear makes your courage more remarkable. Every time you do something despite being afraid, Every time you choose hope over despair, every time you extend kindness to another survivor even when you're struggling yourself, that's heroism. Sarah. For the first time, Sarah began to see herself through Michael's eyes, not as a broken victim who needed to be fixed, but as a warrior who had already won the most important battle of her life, the battle for her own soul. They tried to convince you that you were worthless, Michael said. But look what you've built from that supposed worthlessness. You've rebuilt your identity, your capacity for trust, your ability to hope. You've helped other survivors find their strength. You've turned your deepest wound into a source of compassion. Sarah felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of a knot that had been there so long she had forgotten what it felt like to breathe without it. I want to try something different today, Michael said. Instead of talking about what you've lost or what they took from you, I want you to tell me what they couldn't take. What survived, no matter how hard they tried to destroy it. Sarah thought for several minutes. My name, she said finally. They called me 23, but I never forgot that I was Sarah Elena Martinez. What else? My desire to help people. Even when I was there, I would try to comfort the newer girls. I would share my food if someone was being punished. What else? Sarah's voice grew stronger. My hope. Even on the worst days, I never completely stopped believing that someday I might be free. Michael smiled, and Sarah saw tears in his eyes. Do you understand now? He asked. They couldn't touch the real you. They couldn't destroy your compassion, your strength, or your hope. Those things were never dirty, Sarah. They were always clean. They were always pure. They were always yours. 1 year after Sarah first walked into the hospital waiting room, she sat in Michael's office for what would be their final regular session. The transformation was remarkable, not just in her appearance, but in the way she carried herself, the steadiness of her gaze, and the quiet confidence in her voice. Sarah had moved out of the specialized shelter 3 months earlier and into a small apartment downtown. She had been working part-time at a local community center, helping coordinate services for other trafficking survivors. The work was difficult emotionally, but it gave her a sense of purpose that she had never experienced before. I have something to tell you, Sarah said, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. I've been accepted into the social work program at the community college. Michael's face lit up with pride. Sarah, that's incredible. How do you feel about it? Terrified, Sarah admitted with a laugh, but also excited. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing my future instead of just surviving my present. The past few months had brought many milestones for Sarah. She had reconnected with her family, a process that had been painful and complicated but ultimately healing. Her mother had wept when Sarah called her for the first time in 3 years, and while their relationship was still fragile, they were slowly rebuilding trust and connection. Sarah had also begun dating someone, a fellow survivor she had met in group therapy. Their relationship was cautious and tender, built on mutual understanding of trauma and a shared commitment to healing. For the first time since her rescue, Sarah was learning what healthy intimacy looked like. There's something else I want to share with you, Sarah said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. I wrote something, a letter to myself. I read it whenever I have a bad day. She unfolded the paper and began to read aloud. Dear Sarah Elena Martinez, you are not what happened to you. You are not the numbers they called you. You are not the lies they told you about your worth. You are the girl who remembered her grandmother's name even in the darkest moments. You are the woman who chose to comfort others even when you were drowning in your own pain. You are the survivor who refused to let them steal your capacity for love. Your body is not dirty. It is strong. It carried you through hell and brought you home to yourself. Every breath you take is a victory. Every day you choose to live is an act of rebellion against those who tried to destroy you. You are clean. You have always been clean, not because of anything you did or didn't do, but because cleanness isn't about what happens to you. It's about who you choose to be in response to what happens to you. You chose love over hate. You chose hope over despair. You chose healing over staying broken. You chose to see other survivors as worthy of compassion, which means you are learning to see yourself as worthy of compassion too. You are free, not because you escaped physical captivity, but because you escaped the mental prison they tried to build around your spirit. You remember your name. You claim your story. You choose your path. You are Sarah Elena Martinez, granddaughter of Elena, daughter of Maria, friend to survivors, helper of the hurting, student of life, and author of your own future. You are clean. You are free. You are home. Love yourself. Michael wiped tears from his eyes as Sarah finished reading. That's beautiful, Sarah, and it's all true. I know, Sarah said simply, and there was no doubt in her voice. It took me a while to believe it, but I know it now. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both reflecting on the journey they had traveled together. What will you miss most about our sessions? Michael asked. Sarah considered the question carefully. I'll miss having a safe place to fall apart, she said. But I'm also excited about not needing to fall apart as often. Michael nodded. You know you can always call if you need to talk. But Sarah, I have a feeling you're going to be just fine. More than fine, Sarah corrected. I'm going to be extraordinary. Not because of what happened to me, but because of who I chose to become despite what happened to me. As Sarah stood to leave, she turned back to Michael one last time. Thank you, she said. Not just for the therapy, but for seeing me as human when I couldn't see myself that way. For helping me remember that I was never as broken as I thought I was. You did all the hard work, Michael replied. I just held up a mirror so you could see what was already there. Sarah smiled and walked toward the door, her steps confident and purposeful. As she reached for the handle, she paused and looked back at Michael. You know what the most beautiful part is? She said. What's that? I finally understand what clean really means. It's not about washing away the past. It's about refusing to let the past wash away who you're meant to be. With that, Sarah Elena Martinez walked out of Michael's office and into her future, not as a victim of trafficking, not as a broken woman trying to put herself back together, but as a survivor who had discovered that her worth had never been damaged in the first place. She was clean. She was free. She was home. And for the first time in years, when she looked in the mirror that evening, she smiled at what she saw. Not because she had forgotten what happened to her, but because she had remembered who she was despite what happened to her. The shackles that had bound her for so long were finally broken, not by someone else's hands, but by her own growing understanding that they had only ever existed in her mind. The real Sarah Elena Martinez had always been free, waiting patiently for the day when she would be brave enough to claim that freedom as her own. That day had finally come.